Hello world, welcome to Finding Focus, which is a channel where we develop a video game from scratch using Love 2D and Lua. If you've always wanted to make a game but don't know where to start, I'll be sharing my game development journey here, talking through my thoughts one line of code at a time. So let's get started here. Let's check out what we're at so far. We've got a little Link's Awakening inspired game. Now, yesterday we left off doing this animation for our flowers, but we ran into some trouble because we want to be able to just say, we want to be able to draw these flowers or any animation sprite on any particular map. So we're going to have to talk our way through figuring out how to implement this in a smart way, because currently we don't have a efficient way to get animations rendering. Now, yeah, you know, I'm really stumped on it. The hard part is all of our normal tiles are just being drawn with a tile ID name, so like grass or sand. The problem with that for an animation is that if we put our animation sprites in the same table as where we initialize the rest of our sprites, they don't get updated over time, so they can't actually animate. So we need to figure out a way to only animate the certain tiles of the certain scene we're in if that certain scene has any animation tiles. So how do we go about doing this? So right now we're rendering them on every scene, which is, you know, not right, but we don't want... Let's take a look at what we're doing right now. So if we go into our map, this is where we're overriding those frames with our animation. So what we're doing is saying, you know, our map is a map object, and when you're oh yeah? Shoot, man, I don't know what to say. Gotta have a Harry Potter delivery service, and I'll just fly an owl right to you whenever I go live. So I know yesterday I said I was gonna think long and hard about how to solve this problem, and I didn't have a lot of time to think about it today. So I'm basically exactly where I was at yesterday, just at the beginning of the stream now. So what we're doing here is manually overwriting the ID for specific frames. Now, this is a bad idea for multiple reasons. One is that we're doing it for every single scene. So that's why flowers are going on every single scene at the 2.5 map grid. Now we want to do this in a different way, but we want to be smart about this, because we want... There's multiple different animated sprites. So we need to keep track of what grid all of those animated sprites are, but we also need to keep track of which grids have which animated sprites. So, oh crap, I just ended the YouTube recording. Oh well, I'll download the VOD and send it to him. That was my bad. I'm trying to see the bitrate of our OBS over here. Okay. Yeah, oop. Yeah, that's okay. No one watches these anyway. Well, I got 69 subscribers, so I've got plenty. You know, I'm really stumped on this. Because it's cool that we've got our map declarations where we can just say, hey, here's where we assign whatever drawable we want. But the problem is we only do this once, so we can't update them over time to animate them. So we have to come up with a way to kind of animate only specific grids of only specific tiles of our specific grids. So what I'm calling grid is the whole scene. So like if we spawn on 1-1 on the map, that's a grid or a scene. And then tiles are the 80 tiles of sprites that were drawn. So we can't just initialize this as a object that cycles through the quads, because we'd have to manually assign these things every single frame, which is kind of overkill. I mean, I don't know if it's really overkill. It's hard to think because computers can think so fast. It's really not a big deal to assign 80 things over and over 60 times a second. So I don't know if we want to be assigning it every single frame or not. My gut tells me we don't want to be doing that. Just because it's, as we add more entities and stuff, you know, we don't want it to get more and more complicated. So, I mean, it's going to get more complicated, so we want to limit the complexity. So what's the simplest way we can do this? Well, the simplest way we can do it is we initialize all our map objects right off the bat. And let's say we have a placeholder. If we have a placeholder sprite for our animated sprites, like imagine a sprite that says animation, and we put that as a placeholder for wherever the animation needs to go, the animated sprite needs to go, so we know which quad we need to overwrite, basically. Then a simple way to do it would be to, you know, we'd have to cycle through all of our maps and get the indices of wherever we have declared an animation to be. And then we'd have to overwrite the certain tiles to be the new updating quad that we got from our animSpitter function that we wrote yesterday. That animSpitter is a class at the moment. It takes in a starting quad, an ending quad, and then a timer. And it just increments the frames and loops it back to 0, given the settings. So what do we do? How do we store a whole global, or we want to be able to store all of our maps and which maps have animations on them, and how do we insert specific animations into specific maps? Like, that's where it gets messy, because it's like if there's ultimately 100 scenes in this game right now, we would need to manually assign, potentially, even if there's just one animation per scene, we would need to manually assign 100 different tiles to the appropriate map object. So I really don't know what our best option is. At this point, I'm kind of thinking maybe we do just manually assign every sprite, every frame, because then we can use our same scripting, our visual scripting here, where we just say, you know, because it'd be nice if we can just say, hey, flowers is right here, and then animated flowers are there because flowers is a animation, and then we can declare and update all of our animations here in our map declarations. It just means that we have to assign our current map every single frame. And when we're transitioning, we'd have to assign our current map and our next map every single frame. It's only 80 values, so, you know, maybe it's not that big of a deal, and maybe we just do it like that. Because anytime I think of a smarter way to do it, it's just way too difficult to pass all that information in a very smart manner. So I think we're gonna try to tackle it the lazy way, this lazy way, and then we'll see if it's slow or if it's, I don't know. We'll try it this way. So the question is, can we update all of our map declarations tables if or with delta time? Now we wouldn't want to do that. Shit. Boy, because it's different because we've got an init which we're giving all of these values. But what's tricky about it is we can't just say in this, like, hey, we get the flowers object that our anim spitter gives us, which is just, you know, changing grids over time. We can't say that because right now it's not updating over time. But if we just say, okay, let's make it a class, and we'll just update that class object of our map globals, then we literally update every single map, every single frame. And we only want to be updating our current map. So what do we do? Let's see where we've got a current map and see if anything makes sense to kind of say, hey, let's overwrite a certain amount of grids. See, and then this gets to the point where if we move our animation assignment outside of this map declaration, then we have to ultimately build out a potential of 100 different animation assignments in our scene or something. So okay, I'm thinking, let me take a look at in our scene how we do the whole map thing. So we've got a current map. Let's see up here. We've got a current map that gets initialized when we initialize our scene, and then our next map gets populated when we transition, and the next map becomes a current map at the end of the transition. So I'm thinking in our scene function somewhere, we need to be able to, and I don't know if we have to do, like what I'm thinking is we initialize all our map declarations as constant, and then we'd have to check which map we're on and see if we have any animations to insert on a frame-by-frame basis, which so far isn't as much work as reassigning the maps every single frame. So let's keep walking through this idea. So we're updating our current map, which would be in our map updates. Let's go in our map update and just see. And this is where we're assigning this stuff. So maybe what we do is our map object has got access to the row and column of the map. So we could potentially say in our init function, you know, if our self.row is equal to 1 and our self.column is equal to 1, then we're going to go ahead and assign our animations for the grid 1, 1. And this is the idea I didn't like, because if we keep building this out, our init will swell up into potentially 100 declarations of this. But the good news is, it only does it once upon the init, but we need to update it over time. So we would ultimately need to. Now, I guess if our anim splitter we've got is getting this frame, then our update is working. Oh, and that's how we do it. We do it with the update right here. So our anim splitter object. So if we build it out like this, we would have to update every single sprite. Every single animation sprite, we'd have to update every frame. Just so we'd have a reference to it to be able to draw it if our current map has that sprite in it. So I still think this might be our best option at this point. I don't like how gross it is, in the sense that we'd have to assign up to 100 things right here. And the thing we would be assigning is just like this, where we would say, you know what, we would say our row 1, 1 gets a tile ID, and this isn't right because our map would become our current map. No, okay, this let's see if we can do something like this, and it will, 1, update our flower, but also 2, only do this, only insert that flower if our row and column is 1. So we're trying to get our flower animation only on our grid 1. So we've got our animation, or we've got our flowers, but they're not animating. But let's see if they're on the other pages. They aren't. So we've got them only on the 1, but we aren't updating them. So what we need to do, see, and this is because it's almost like we need to, we're only assigning the frame once in the init. We need to assign the frame. I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like it. I don't want our update function to be 100 questions of, hey, are we on row 1, 1? Okay, let's render all the animations. Hey, are we on row 2, 2? Because 99 of those are going to be false, and we're still going to be asking. So I don't like that idea. How would we go about only doing something I don't know. I feel like in the init we'd have to ask. I don't know. I don't know. We want to be able to say in our map update function, Like, we would know what grid we're at because we have a reference to our current grid. So if there's a function we can write, I'm about to ask ChatGPT just to see if they got any ideas, but I don't know how to even word this to ChatGPT to even get anything remotely close to an answer. Let's see. It'll be so bad. It'll be so bad if we try to do it. I'm tempted to try it, but it's gonna be so bad. Like, okay, so I am building a game in Love 2D with Lua. Now, I am trying to insert animations into our global map table at certain locations. How do I only insert animations into the current scene at the correct... Dude, this is gonna spit out some garbage. This is like... We'll see what it spits out. How do I only insert animations into the current scene at the correct locations without manually reassigning every sprite every frame of the update? Let's see what it says. Okay, we want to define our animation data. Define animation data separately from the map. This could include information like the sprite sheet, frame duration, sequences, etc. Separate logic from data. Keep your game logic and data separate. Your map table should be primarily data about the environment, not the animations. In your update function, iterate over your map table and check if any animations need to be inserted. If so, insert the animation at that location. So let's see, it says, let's say we have animation data, which has the sprite sheet. This is our anim spitter function, essentially, that we have, that has the quad. It would spit out the quad of whatever animation data we need. Then we've got a map. We've got a map, and this isn't how we've got it set up. But map data, and then insert animations. Yeah, it did a better job than I thought it would do. I don't know if Ask Jeeves is still a thing. It's just ask. Oh shit, he's going off. Okay. I like this idea of keeping logic separate from data. It's just that at the end of the day, we still have to render let me see if we can, oh shoot. If we've got, let's say we've got our map declarations, which is a 2D array, oh god. Right, it's a table of a whole bunch of values, which is like grass, sand. Now we want to be able to insert an animation, but if we have what? Oh crap. This isn't even showing up. Let me see if that's showing up. Why does full screen just crap out on OBS here? That's so weird. It's showing up on my screen. Oh, it's working now? Okay. I don't know why it does that, but it's working. We've got our global table there. Ideally, what we want to do is insert the animation at the certain frame. So it's like, if we want to be able to figure out, does the frame have animations? Does this scene have animation? And if it does, what animation and where does it need to be inserted? And then we can go into this map and overwrite the values. So do we say something like, that is just so messy. So if this is a table, and it's a table of all our values here. Grass, sand, whatever. Water, sand, whatever it is. We would want a placeholder for animation. So like what if our table has animation and we have animation is equal to a certain value, so we know how to check it. So like anim is oh god. Let's just say it's like 400 or something. So then when we're in our current scene, maybe we do a for loop into our map, and we see if it's an animation, then we can replace it with an anim splitter object that gets updated over time. Oh gosh, and then this isn't showing up again. Why does it do that? Okay. Okay, so it's only, I don't get why it just doesn't, why is it able to show us the cursor but not the anything else? Let's just move this. Okay, that's just gonna have to be how we do it. So we can have a value in our map table to know whether or not we want to override it with an animation. But the tricky part still is we need to know which animation it is. It needs to spit out the correct grid for that animation, and we need to insert it and overwrite it in the correct location for the correct scene. So at the end of the day, we still have to update. We can update only the map values that have animation in their spot. We would update. We'd still have to cycle through all of them. Or maybe instead of cycling through, we would cycle through once when we first switch our current map. So like upon the init of our current map, maybe we go and get a reference to every tile ID. So let's say like once current map runs in its init function, we need to loop through and snag a reference to every tile that has an animation in it. So we would cycle through this, and we would save into a animated tiles field or something. So like we can call it anim tiles. And we would assign all the tiles. So it's 1 through 80. So we would say, you know, maybe this could be a reference or a it's like, let's say you know, the very top left, which is tile 1, is an animated tile, and let's say that the very bottom right, 80, is a tile. We would save these values into a table. So it's like, okay, for the current map, we have a table of animated tiles. Now, they are these two values. So now instead of cycling through every single map, every single frame, and checking if there's an animation, we just know once our current map gets assigned, go ahead and run in there, grab a reference to every tile ID that has an animation. And then once we have that, we need to insert the type of animation. So like whatever the anim spitter gives us, that's our function, is called anim spitter. It spits out the quad of whatever sprite or of whatever animation we defined, and a timing of it. So anim spitter is the resulting value that we need to plug in as the tile ID to overwrite the frames here. So I guess is the question, if we've got an anim spitter that gives us the updated value to insert into our global map here, are these two values enough for us to decide what needs to go and overwrite our map? Let's take a look at our, where is it? We've got dude. So how we're currently doing it here is we've got a row and a column, not a value of tile ID, but because the tile ID refers to which row of the tiles. Okay, so instead of passing in 1 or 80, we need to be passing in 1, 1 or 8, 10. So we can, I think we would still be able to cycle through our global map table, check against the value for our animation insertion, and if the value is an animation insertion, we're going to snag the current row we're at and the current column we're at, insert it into an animation tiles table, store that in our self.current map for our scene, and we only need to save that once upon the assignment of the current map, because the animation, the tiles that are going to be animated aren't going to change until our next map comes onto screen. But even then they get scooted off. So if we have a reference to the index that we need to change our tiles, which is right here, like let's say on 1-1 we've got a 2-2 and a 5-5 needing to be overwritten, then we still need, probably in our map class, a reference to every anim spitter being updated over time so that we can have the correct grid for it updating. And then we need to manually insert only in these two tables the values of these things. So what that might look like is we wouldn't, like, ignore that we set this in the init for now, and what if we just say, by the way, on the update function, we're just going to update our row 1-1 with this anim spitter frame. That gives us moving flowers, so that's good. Now I guess the question is, so if we walk off to another frame, the flowers don't move with us, and that's because we're only putting them at row 1-1. But what I'm worried about is that what I'm worried about is having to do this, which is define the animation frames for every single map. I don't want to have to do that. If we have 100 squares, we've got to do this in our update function 100 times. So is there, we would want to, instead of saying if our row is 1 and our table's 1, we would want to say something like, we would say update our, like, I don't know what we would call it. We would call it like animation update. Bear with me here. So like if we say anim update and we run anim update on our self.row and our self.column, if we were to write a function that would take this, we don't have to have 100 different variations of this, but we would still need a way to manually assign certain animations into certain grids. So now maybe what this does, maybe what this animation update does is say, okay, I was given a self.row and a self.column, so I'm going to go into our animated tiles table, which is going to be updated for the current scene. And it's going to have not two values like this, but it's probably going to have the row, the column, so like the 2 and the 2, and then the anim spitter that it needs to reference as well. So if this function is given the row and column, we're going to go into our anims table, our anim tiles, whatever we call that. We're going to go into there, and we're going to go make a list. We've got a list of all of our indices that we need to insert an animation into, and we have a drawable declared. So how we would need to make sure because the thing we're missing here is a way to declare what animation is going to be replaced from our anim placeholder. So if our global map table has the anim placeholder, all we know is there's an animation there. We don't tell it which animation. So with this method, we'd have to find a way to assign which animation goes into which location, but there's no way to easily automate that because we could potentially put in 40 animated tiles. Let's say there's a whole floor of lava. Most of the floor is lava bubbles and they all need to be animated. If we have that, then it'll read all these anim placeholders and it'll be like, okay, well, our anim tiles is gonna have 40 different indices of where lava needs to be inserted, but we don't have a way to say the only thing that needs to be inserted is lava, or a way to say, hey, that thing is going to be lava. This is really tough because maybe there's okay, I'm thinking if we make anim tiles a class, and that class has a reference to the ID, the row, the column, the anim spitter, as well as, well, I guess that's what it would be. That's all it would be, is it would have a reference. And then we can say, we would cycle through all the animations, but then we'd have to have some table where we say, okay, we know grid 5.5, for example, is all lava. So we would say at grid 5.5, and then we can manually insert anim tiles at index 1 dot anim spitter gets lava. And then we would have to manually assign that for every single of those 40. Because our table anim tiles has to have a reference to which animation we're trying to draw. Otherwise it can't update it. But this is getting so complicated because it's like we wouldn't need to update. We wouldn't need to assign that lava anim spitter more than once. So we can do it in the init here for the current map, but it is still messy. I don't know if, I can't think of another way to kind of accomplish this, because at the end of the day, we need an anim spitter being overwritten into every ID that there is. So like we need specific IDs to get specific animation frames, but we have potentially 100 different levels and who knows how many animations. So what is the way to do it? Like if we want to abstract this away and say forget declaring and keeping track of all these different classes and stuff. Like if we just let's go back into GIMP here. What if we say, like if we abstract it all away and we just say we want a way to insert animations into certain grids. So like let's say we just have a function called animInsert. And animInsert would take in a location, so an X, a Y for our grid, plus an animation to put somewhere. So like let's say we have an animInsert function that all it does is put an updated anim spitter object into a certain tile of our current scene. It's like that's all good and well, but what that doesn't allow us to do is to easily declare for each map, because no two maps are going to have the same animations at the certain spot. So it's almost like like if we have another function that runs through all the anim inserts for the current map we're on, then we just declare which anim inserts need to go where, and then we do that in the init, I guess. So like we would say, let's walk this out. If we've got like in our current map init, we would declare that map 1.1 would have a certain amount of anim inserts. So we can, if we have a table of them, it would look like, okay, well there's 3. We got anim insert 1, anim insert 2, and this is, instead of 1, it's just like anim insert, anim insert, anim insert, and we're inserting at the first frame. We're inserting at 1 frame below that, and then we're inserting at the bottom right, which would be 8:10. But this would be, we would have to also say, okay, this gets flowers, they all get flowers. This gets flowers, this gets flowers, this gets flowers. And then what that allows us to do is we'd have to declare a table of which inserts go where, and we'd have to update. See, that's tough. We'd have to update. We would, see, and then it's back to our same problem of like, oh, well, you know what we can do? If instead of map 1.1 where we're saving that, we know it is if it's a variable called map 1.1 or whatever, it's not a reference to our table, and it's getting all those anim inserts. Is there a way that this anim insert will, oh crap, dude. Because the problem is here, we need to update this animation over time. And not only do we need to update it over time, but we need to insert it over time so that it gets the updated insert. So instead of this being in the init, this would have to be in the update function. And then we're back to our same problem of, okay, well, we'd have to update the map every single frame, which is fine, but we want to make sure we only update our current map. So maybe we say, our current map has a function. If our map object has a function called animation insert, we would want to store the result of that animation insert. No, because god damn it, dude. I feel like this is more on the right path than the other idea. I guess if we try to start small with this, what do we have to do? I think we need to give our map object a table of animations to insert. And every animation that needs to be inserted will have three things. It'll have a row and a column and the type of animation, and that needs to be in the update function because we have to be rendering the new animations for it. So if every map object has a table, I don't know what it's called, but we have a table of our total animations or whatever, and every index of that animation is a anim insert function call that will insert into our tiles. It'll be our current map tiles at whatever that parameter was for our row and our column, as well as an assignment to whatever our anim spitter dot frame was. So we would have to, and we do, update our animation spitter objects in our map class, but we would have to store all the function calls for the current map in a table somewhere, so that every frame we can say, go ahead and run all of your animation inserts. So go ahead and do that every frame and assign whatever the updated dot frame of our anim spitter is, insert that into the correct tile, and then that way we only call the amount of functions that we need to insert a frame, and we only do it for the current frame. I think that makes sense to me. I think I want to leave this on, and we can see if we can tackle something like this. Because at the end of the day, we do need to assign the flowers.frame into a certain tile ID for our current map object. So that makes sense, but we need to be able to store so that we don't have to declare, hey, if our row is 1 and our column is 1, go ahead and assign these amount. What we do is we have, how would we go through and say, how would we populate our table here? I want to say we would have all of these in our init function. We would have all of the declarations of all the animations for every scene, which is a lot to render, but we're only doing it that once on the init. Then once we have it in the init, we say, okay, well now we've got a whole table of the animations for this current scene we're at. And then at that point, in our update function, we go ahead and just update all those frames that we need to. And then we render just like normal our tile ID. So I think this could work. I still think we would probably need an anim spitter object for every animation in our map init. But let's see if we can't do this. So I'm gonna, it's distracting to see the GIMP back there because I can't read it that great. Let's see if we can figure this out. So we need a table that can store objects of our animation insert. And it's not necessarily objects, it's a table of functions to run. I've never stored multiple functions in a table and then cycled through them and executed them. So I've just never done that. I don't know if that's that should be possible. Yeah, sup lurkers, how's it going? If you want to try the command updog lurker, you could try it. !updog. Maybe it's just Fartknocker being quiet, you know. I think we're on the right track with this. So, and look at this. We've got a commented out animation values table that we were trying at some point. So we, in our map class, we need a reference to all the animations to update. Now, if this is the table to hold all the animation inserts, we'll call it animation inserts, and we'll declare it to be an empty table, but I don't know. I don't know if the move is to say right here, like, oh, if our self.row is equal to 1 here in our init, and our self.column is equal to 1, then we would say, okay, then we're on frame 1-1. We're on scene 1-1, which means we would insert all of our animations into our 1-1 table. So what that might look like is, well, we need to modify the tiles at the correct index. So like, let's say that the index is 2-2 and 5-5. So we're saying, okay, our animation inserts, and this is where, and we're not trying to, we want our function to handle the actual insertion into our tiles table, but we want to just call the function, we want to call the function, and instead of looping through every function table, what we can do is just literally manually call the insert animation function. So like, let's say we write this function InsertAnim, and it takes in the place, takes in the row to insert it, it takes in the column to insert it, and it takes in the thing to insert, which is a flowers dot frame. And then we would say we also want a flowers at 5-5. Now at the moment this function doesn't exist, so this wouldn't do anything. But if we declare that what that function is, and we say hey, that function called InsertAnim takes in a couple parameters. It takes in a row, it takes in a column, and it also takes in an animation to render. Now, what this needs to do is what this is doing, which is saying, okay, we're going to modify our tiles table now. And we're going to modify our tiles table with the quad that is being spit out of our animation spitter. So animation spitter is just, that's the word I came up for it, which is just, you give it a starting frame and end frame and a speed, and it'll cycle through the quads. So it's going to say, instead of these hard-coded values, and instead of 2 of them, it's literally just going to take in, okay, well, we're going to use the row you give us, we're going to use the column you give us, and we're going to assign the animation that you give us. Now, as long as the animation we pass is in fact a dot frame, which is the quad that the anim spitter should be spitting out. It doesn't actually return a value, but we just use its frame field as long as we're updating the animation spitter object in our update function. So something like this, you know, if we can say so our init would say, go ahead and insert 2 animations into our grid 1, and we're inserting it at 2, 2, and 5, 5. And then I think we need a reference to this flowers before we do that. So we'll do that first. And then what we'll try to do, we don't want this anymore. So we've got an InsertAnim function that should modify the tiles table at whatever 2 parameters we put first. And it will insert the quad of whatever animation frame that we give as the 3rd argument. So as long as we call these functions every frame, we'd have to call them every frame. Okay, so here's what we can do instead of, because this can bloat out to really disgusting proportions, and instead of this self.row, we would say, oh, see, look, we've got this animation update. So we need to run this. We need to write this animation update function so that we can only update the current frame we're on. So animation update is a function that we're going to declare right now. And what it does is it takes 2 parameters. It only takes in the row and the column of the map table to update the animation functions. But here's the tricky part, is we need to be able to call and update every function that belongs to that current scene. Now, right now, we don't have the table of all of these insert animation functions. So how do we store, how do we say, you know, we would say, oh God, how do we do it? Like we would say, we need to get, like let's say we had a variable called, I don't know. Because the thing is, ideally we only call the animation update on its current place. Ideally it's that simple in our update function. But the idea is, for our current scene, we need to update all the potential functions that we initialized, because we need to reinitialize them. We need to initialize them every frame, because we need to insert the current frame into the current index every single frame. So this doesn't need to be in the init function. It needs to be in the update function, but we don't want to be updating all 100 of our scenes every single frame. So how do we say we only want to update the animations for our current row and current column? So how does that it's almost like we need a table. Like, let's call it, if we had a table that just is called animations for now, we say animations is gonna get no, I think, oh God, how do we do it? We want to, it's like instead of running the functions here, we would want to say, like, let's say we have a self.animations. I don't know, anim functions is just kind of what I'm thinking. Like, if we call it anim functions and it's an empty table, then instead of calling these two functions, we want to, I think we can do this. I want to like insert the function into a table and then cycle through our table of functions and execute each one of them. Is that possible to do in Lua? Because I want to be able to say table.insert into our self.anim functions table of an actual function. And then same thing here. Like, I want to say table.insert into our self.anim functions table, a literal function. Now, I don't know how Lua would handle that. I feel like it would just crash. For right now, what I'm going to do is turn off our animation update and just see if Lua allows us to insert a function into a table. So map 30, map 30, it didn't like this insert anim. Map 14, okay. I don't think it likes that. It doesn't like that. So is there another way? Oh my God. Okay, I got an idea. Oh, I don't like it. The idea is to store all the arguments for our function and then to run through. I don't like that. I don't like that. So we can't insert a function into a table to run all the functions. So what are our other options? Because we need to be able to say, go ahead and update the animations for the current frame. And what that needs to do is run an arbitrary amount of functions with specific data depending on the current row and column. So how do we make a function that runs a certain amount of functions? I mean, it sounds so simple. Because what this function would need to do is run all the functions in. Okay, oh, no. Because it's hard because we can't hard code anything. You know, we need to be able to, goddamn, we can't hard code it in the sense that if we tell it, God damn it. We need this function to spit out maybe 0 insert anim functions because if there's no enum functions in 1.1, it would do nothing. It would spit out nothing. But then if, let's say there's a whole floor of lava, we've got 40 lavas, it would need to spit out 40 function calls every frame. And those function calls are all defined in the init or wherever. So how do we say that? How do we say go ahead and update all the things I feel like this is really easy, and I'm just not figuring it out. I think what we need to do I'm wondering if we had like a 2D array for the map, and we I don't know how to do it. We're kind of on the right track. Man, I'm sorry guys. I mean, I'm stumped. Yeah, how would we execute specific functions over and over and over, only depending on what current frame we're on? What current scene we're on, I should say. We have a way to initialize them, sure, but we don't have a way to update them in a smart manner. Now, we can't store functions inside variables unless they have return values. This doesn't have a return value, this just does stuff. And what it does is just assign an animation into a specific ID field in our tiles table. So, since it doesn't return any value, it just does something. I don't like this. I don't like that we would have to do this. Yeah, I don't like that we would have to do so many potential updates. We only want to run the amount of functions for our current frame, but what those functions are differ for every single frame or every single scene. So I'm just gonna play my game a little bit. Well, I can't do that. So I think what we want to do is what? Not do this. Okay. Okay. I feel like I'm missing something simple. we want to call a certain amount of functions depending on our frame, every single frame of the game. But how would we... We'd have to define which functions to call. Okay, so what if we have a function that just calls all the functions we need, right, for the current frame? So like if like I want to say, if we have this animation update that takes in the row and column, what this needs to do is be populated. This function itself needs to be defined as the current functions that we need. So like instead of inserting them into the init, we put them in the declaration of this animation update. See, but then we'd have to manually program each scene with the current. Like, this doesn't solve our problem of decoupling these things. Okay, I'm trying to think if we kind of... I don't want to limit ourselves to only one animated sprite at a given time. So I don't think I want to do what I was just thinking, which is... because like what I was kind of thinking is like, instead of this function being hard-coded, what we would say is have a function that runs through our global maps table. It looks for that anim placeholder, let's say it's 400, and then every 400 it would replace with a certain animation, and then we update basically every anim placeholder as a certain drawable. That kind of gets bypassed the way of having a certain amount of functions for every scene, but that doesn't allow us to add different animations. So what if, because yeah, it's if we had to cycle through and put one animation in there, that's easy enough, but we want custom animations. So I really can't tell if this is really a hard problem or not. I mean, I'm having trouble with it, obviously, but it makes sense that it'd be this difficult because we're trying to update only certain frames over time with very specific values at a specific frame speed, and we're trying to only do one portion of our big data set and try to be efficient with it. So yeah, I think it makes sense that it's this difficult. I just feel like I kind of should have figured it out by now. Okay, so if we break it down, like, what are we trying? What's the simplest way of explaining what we're trying to do? We're trying to overwrite certain sprites with other sprites. Okay. So which sprites are we trying to overwrite? Well, it depends on the map. Okay. And what are we trying to overwrite it with? Well, it depends on the level design. Okay. And we only want to update them if they need to be updated. And hopefully not check every single frame needlessly. Every single scene, I should say, needlessly. So how would we go about overriding certain frames on a certain scene? Well, we need to know what X and Y we're trying to override and what drawable we're trying to override, which is what we've got here in our insert animation. But that's not good enough, because we need to be able to make this efficient, and we need to be able to define what animations and where, and we need to update them over time, 60 times a second depending on the frame. So I think this needs to be a class. If this insert animation is a class, then we can update it over time. And if the class has the init that defines what animation goes where for which scene in the init, then every time we update, all we're doing is getting the current map row being passed in and updating the animation spitter and inserting into the correct tile ID. So I'm thinking if we turn it into a class, we can go ahead and move all of these inits into the class, and then we update the class so that it cycles through all of the current but then this is the same problem in the sense that our update function needs to have a reference to the current row and which functions it needs to insert every time. But I think that's okay, because we do have to update every single animation sprite, every single frame for the scene. We still don't have a smart way of only doing that for the current map. So let's give us an insert animation class, and we'll see if we can just do scene 1-1. So let's try to do that. Let's go out to our classes. We'll give us a new file called animation. What do we call it? Animation, what did we call it? Animation update. I don't like that. Insert animation, okay. So we'll make insert animation its own class. So we'll say insert animation.lua is gonna be an insert animation gets class squirrely braces. Then we need a couple functions. We need an init, so an insert animation init. And we need a update. So we need an insert animation update. And that will get delta time. And then we also need a render function We probably won't do that. Actually, yeah, we don't need a render function because what this class is doing is just changing the tile ID of our global maps table. So actually of our scenes tiles table. So we've got this. Now we've got to make sure that our dependencies is referencing it. So we'll go ahead and require our classes slash insert animation class. So we've got that. Now let's go back to our map, and we'll take this as reference, and we'll go into our insert animations class. We will harpoon it so we can access it. We will paste this for reference, and what needs to happen in our init is we need to declare which and I think it would be useful if our init would take in the map row and the map column, because we need to declare specific animations for specific scenes. So here we would say if our, and I want to assign our parameters into variables we can use. We could just use the parameter, but I just think it's better hygiene to do it this way. So we're taking our map row and column, and we would want to declare which animations go into actually, I don't think we want to do that in the init. I think we want to do it in the update. We would say if our map row is equal to 1 and our map column is equal to 1, then we want to run our functions that will insert our animation. So this is the class, but we want a function to actually insert it. So the class, it probably isn't appropriate to call it the insert animation class. I don't know what else to call it though. We need our function, which we've got our function here, right? So we can say, hey, by the way, we've got a function called InsertAnimation that takes in 3 different things. And what it does is assign the third parameter to be equal to the ID field of our tiles table. Now, it's not self.tiles. What it really is our scene view. It is our scene view dot tiles at our row column dot ID gets the animation quad. Now, this is what we need to do every frame. Now we need to say if it's row 1 1, okay. So what this does is, if we update our insert animation class, it will ask what map row we're on, which it gets initialized with parameters there. This is going to confuse us. This can be moved to the bottom, I believe. And then if we update, see, and this is, I guess, where I don't get is, do we update our animation spitter here? I think it would make sense. So we can kind of move our animation spitter into this insert animation class. Therefore, we're inserting the frame into the current or the scene views tiles.row ID. Okay. Now, yeah. So anytime we assign a current frame, we would instantiate a insert animation object into our current scene at the current scene's row and column. And then we need to update our insert animation function every frame, which will overwrite our animation spitter's quad ID so that hopefully it updates the frame at the given declaration here. And then all we would have to do is, see, and I don't like this. I don't like saying we'd have to do an insert animation for every single quad. Like I want to do like a switch statement there that says, you know, we get our map and row, and then we only execute the code for the given map and row, instead of asking, is map row 1? Is it 2? Is it 3? Because if it's 90, it asks 89 times until it finally inserts the damn thing. But we know right off the bat, if our map row is 90, or let's say 810, then we want to just insert the animations for that given row and column. So let's see. Let's see if we give ourselves an insert animation object in our scene that we can update it, and let's see if it updates our tile.id. So let's see. We'll go to our scene. Now, we don't want our scene class, we want our scene instantiation, which is in our play state, I believe. And here is our scene instantiation. But we do, I think actually we do want to be, we're updating our scene. So if we go into our scene, we want to give ourselves a self.insert animations table. Or an insert animations object, which gets insert animation parentheses, and it should just be insert animation. Yep, no S. And it takes in two parameters, which is going to be mapped to our self.mapRow and our self.mapColumn. And what this is going to do is give us an insert animation object. And all that means is it's going to save into our self.insertAnimation two values, which is just a reference to the row and the map of the row and map that it was instantiated in. And then we're going to have to update that object, which is going to ask for what row it's on. And then depending on which row it's on, it's going to insert and overwrite the animation spitter. So we still need to put our animation spitter here in our InsertAnimation class. It used to be in our map. Now we'll take our anim spitter here out. We'll put it in our init. And then we also need to update our anim spitter, which we are doing in here. So we'll take that and we'll put that in our update so that we can actually get the quad updated, which will update its frame, which we can then insert. I think we can declare this function after the fact. I think we can do that. We might need to move it up if it crashes, but that is all looking good. Now if we go back to our map class, we can delete some stuff here. We don't have that animation update. We don't have this animation update anymore, or ever in the first place. We don't have animation inserts and we don't have animation functions. But what we do need to do is go to our scene and we need to update this object of self.InsertAnimations. That is our actual object, our actual class instantiation, and we'll go to our update and we will say InsertAnimations : update, pass in delta time. Now that delta time we're passing in will get passed into our I was going to say our anim spitter, which it does, and then that gets updated. So let's see. Let me see if it just crashes. Of course it does. 18 attempt to index tiles, which is a nil value. Now this tiles is apparently nil, so our scene view doesn't have tiles. Is that right? Why? It's our map that has tiles. So our scene view current map is what we need to do instead of scene view. So we'll say scene view at our current map dot tiles gets that. Oh my god. Okay, it's doing it for every... This is exactly where we were at the beginning of the episode. But why does it... It should only insert those... It should only insert those... Let me see if I change this. Let me change it to 1.1 and see if it does update it. It does. Now... Oh, we're so close. Now, why is it doing it if the map row and column isn't 1? Well, are we resetting it every current scene instantiation? I don't believe we are. So, under our scene, we say, hey, give us this map row, but what we need to do is do this under every map instantiation, because every map instantiation is the screen we're on. We only initiate one scene, so that's why it makes sense that the flowers are in every scene. So we should put not only this declaration, but this update in our map scene instead. So we can say now our map has a InsertAnimations declaration as well as an update. Now we need to make sure we're updating our current map, which I believe we are, even though that was an empty function. I believe if we go to our scene class, we'll see that we are updating our current map. So let's see. We're just not rendering it. We're just not changing anything. So what is going on? in our map that we're not actually doing that. We are given... Okay, so we're missing one more set of code from our scene, and it should be whatever update. No, current map update. Oh shit. Okay. So why are we not changing our map? We are calling the insert animations update, which should be updating our object. Oh, this is getting the wrong thing. We need to pass in just row and just column. Okay. Now, okay, here's a moment of truth. If we walk off screen and there's no flowers on the next screen, we're in business. Yes. Okay. So we've got... Now look at... They appear off screen? Okay. When we first go on screen, they're gone, but they move off screen. So I think what that means is we need to put our insert animations into our begin transition function of our current map transition, and then we'll be able to insert whatever animation into any square we want. But let's see if it makes sense to initialize an insert animations field, an insert animation object in our transition, because let's see what we're doing in our scene transition for a begin transition. Now we populate well, it's not begin shifting gets true. So it's not until we finish shifting that we actually assign the next map into the current map. So, but our next map, okay, we do draw our next map. So we need to change our next map's values to be equal to these animations as well, so that I guess I'm looking for where we're... Okay, yeah. So we assign the next map based on what transition we've got, but we also need to update. We'd also need to update our animations in there as well. So actually, and next map is a map object, which has the insert animations function already. So how do we just say, we are instantiating the animations for it. Let me just continue to play around. Let's see if we give ourselves more animations on screen, that if we can kind of figure out anything. So this is the only part I don't like about our solution, is that every time our insert animation update runs, it's going to ask every single thing. Like it's gonna have to ask every single row it's at, and if it's at map row of 1 and map column of 2, then we can update the animations for a singular scene. So we'll try to place different animations here. I mean, it'll be the same animation but different locations. Let's just try like 6 and 1 and 2 and 4. I don't know. And we'll see if 1, 2. Okay. Doesn't like it. Syntax error at 23. Yeah, we want else. Else if here. Okay, so we've got those two. Okay, so we do have working animations on multiple different screens. And the rendering them off works, but we don't render them on the transition. They only appear once the next map is assigned to the current map. And that's because we're only updating our current map, not our next map. Well, let's see. Because I think if we look at our insert animation, we are updating only our current map here. So what if we update, oh god, what if we update our next map tiles to also be whatever, and it wouldn't be the current row? Let's see what that does. Let's see if that does anything. Oh god. Okay. Really? That crashes it? Yep. Okay, so when we insert the animation, we are currently only inserting that animation into the current map. And when we start to transition, we are rendering the current map and the next map. So what we need to do is to place our animations from our next map into, actually, we just need, I guess I'm a little confused. Now, I guess it might be an order of operations thing. Like, because the next map is a map instantiation, we should be inserting the animation into that map's instantiation based on its row and column. So I don't think we would need to do something like that. But if we take a look at our scene and our transition, we've got a current map and a next map. Now, once we begin shifting, we start rendering our next map. And the next map becomes our current map. And that's where we're actually rendering the updated animations. But why is it that they're not there until the next map becomes the current map? Because this line of code means that, or proves that we've got the right animation in the next map by the time it's scrolling on, but it's just not rendering it. So we do render our next map if we have one. We're so close. We're so close. I just don't get why it only appears once the next map becomes the current map. And it's weird that it draws them off fine. It just doesn't draw them on fine. Now, when we're finished shifting here, actually, I guess we shift our camera X. Okay, so I guess, how is it that our next map doesn't have the right values? Our next map is a map object that should have our insert animation, and we should be passing in the row of whatever it is. Let's see, when we change into a next map, we get, we instantiate it with a new a new column. So the next map has access to another column, which should become the insert animations parameter for when we okay. Yeah, so our next map would get its own insert animations. Let me see if I +1 to this, if this would render the next frame on. So it's rendering... Okay. No, not quite. This would just crash it, wouldn't it? No? It still doesn't render it on. Okay. There's something I'm not understanding about this. Shit. We're so close. We're really close. Why would it not be rendering the insert animations? Why would the insert animations not be? Are we updating the next map? I don't think we're updating the next map. If we go to our scene, we are only updating our current map. So let's update our next map if next map exists. So what we'll do is we will say if self.nextMap. So like if it's not nil, then we'll go ahead and update next map. But this is, let me see. Because that would technically allow us to walk during a transition, I think, but let's see. Wow. It does, wow, okay. It does render them, it just doesn't render them at the right next map location. And then see, it renders the first map one as soon as we initialize that, so it's not rendering it at the right location. We're close. We're really close. Now I don't think we want to update the next map until we're done transitioning, but we need to assign the next map's animations based on the transition, but that's gonna get messy real quick. It's really close. It's rendering them, it's just rendering them at the current map, not the next map. So how do we fix it? And we render our current map tiles. Let me just try to render our next map tiles and see if it lets us. It doesn't. Next map is a nil value. Okay. God dang, we're real close. And we crash if we try to update a nil value, so we have to ask if it exists to update it. But why is it rendering it at the it's rendering the new inserts at the old location. I don't get it. So we're inserting a certain animation into a certain square at the map row that we pass in. But what it is not doing is inserting this it's not inserting these values into the next map. And you know what? I don't see what's wrong with it, because if our second page is here, map row 1 and then map column 2, then in our scene, once we initialize a transition, we like, let's say we do this transition, our next map becomes, and this is oh, hold on a sec. Okay, yeah. So if we walk right, we would instantiate a next map at the one column in front of it. And what happens with that next map is that next map is a map instantiation, so it should be inserting our pictures into I wonder if we can just do like, you know what, just do a next map. And actually, oh my goodness, we have a lowercase m here, and we're not passing in the current map with a capital M. Maybe that will fix it. Let's see. Okay, scene 21 crashed. Well, dude, what happened? How did we miss like 5 lowercase things here? Shit, man, I thought that was it. I thought that would be it. We're close. We're close. I'm curious if we can just say, hey, now that we've got a next map, why don't we just update that map? Please and thank you. Now, I don't know if we need a delta time to update it. Let's see. Yep, it needs a delta time. And if we give it delta time, it doesn't have access to it, so it still crashes. So if we just put in a number to be treated as delta time, we don't crash, and it renders our thing at the wrong spot. So like, how do we Now this has to do with our X offset, our adjacent X offset. We're not rendering our inserted animations at our adjacent X offset. Yeah, so like, where are we updating our adjacent X offset that we are not? We should be rendering the whole map at the adjacent X offset, so it shouldn't matter. We should be rendering, yeah, we're rendering the whole map at our adjacent X offset, so our insertion here of our animations should be already tethered to our adjacent X offset. So we're so close. I don't know what is going on. Now, what's baffling to me is that, like, by the time it's done transitioning, we know what animation needs to be inserted. But until the map until the current map we take a look at our map class. Our map, as soon as our map gets instantiated, we get an insert animation that takes in that row and column that the map was instantiated at. So in our scene, by the time we're transitioning, we get a next map that gets initialized, gets instantiated at the current map modified by a direction. Now, we aren't updating the next map, so we are in fact we're getting a new map object in our next map with the correct values inserted into our tiles table. But our next map isn't being, I don't know. It is being, now we do render the next map if it exists. If we turn that off, we shouldn't see any sprites until it's ready to be drawn. So what's the difference between our next map and our insert animation that we're not rendering it there? And it's because we're rendering a next map. So our next map is a map instantiation, which gets these inserted values. I don't get why it's not working. Because our next map would get the indexes, the correct indexes, to be initialized, to be inserted with the correct animations in the correct spots, but we are inserting the animation only into the current map. So what if we say, if the scene view dot next map, meaning if it's not nil, then we go ahead and render our next map tiles. And it's not next map tiles that we want to render. It's that we would want to render, actually, if we have a next map, yeah. Because what we're doing here is saying we're gonna take these arguments and insert them into the current map, but only the current map. So if it's the next map, we want to insert it into the next map. So we want to do that if the next map exists. We almost got it. Like we're rendering the flowers. Oh shit. How did that happen? Okay, no, we're just messing up. Oh god. Okay, that's real jacked. Okay, so what this is doing is rendering the current map sprites at the next map location, regardless if they belong there or not. So that doesn't get us the right effect. We don't want to be rendering the next maps. We don't want to be rendering the current maps tiles. Shit, man. So when we insert an animation, we only insert it into the current map. Now, once a next map gets instantiated, it's going to be given the updated map row and map column. And at that point, it needs to render. And how come hey, thanks, man. Hey, thanks. I appreciate you watching, bud. Have a good night. Yeah, man. I mean, I'm with you. Okay. We're really close. Like, I would have stopped programming by now if we weren't just so close to fixing this. So our insert animation function is only inserting. It's only inserting into the instantiated locations the animated frames. So let's look at when we call. Let's see when we instantiate our insert animation class. Where is it? Is it in our map? Yes. So we insert our animations only for the current map, right? So our map has it. Now, when we get a new map, that map has an insert animations, and it is whatever the values of the next map is. But that's the problem here, is that we're inserting it into the current map. We're not inserting anything into the next map tiles. So what do we need to insert into the next map tiles? We need to insert the animations into the next map tiles, but it needs to be we don't know what the next map is until we initiate a transition. So it's almost like we need to reinstantiate our insert animation upon a transition, give it the new map row and column, instead of initializing it once in our map. It's like we need to reinitialize it. We need to reinitialize it upon a transition. Now we don't do okay, so if we give ourselves the insert animation field in our map instantiation, the difference is we need to not only insert it into the current map, but into the next map if there is one. So we need to, if there's a transition, we need to initialize the next map, which will only render the current frames. So it'll disappear the frames that we're on. I think that's right. And then we need to modify the next maps, the dot next maps. We need to go into that next map and go ahead and the next map should have a field called Insert Animations that we're overriding with these values. So if we've got, if we go vi brackets change with a paste, no, shit. Okay, we just need this vi brackets, fuck. Okay, we yank this, we paste it here. So what this will do is, this is actually, I think the only difference here is that we are inserting into our next, this doesn't make sense. The problem is, only ever modifying our current map tiles. So how come, I mean, it makes sense that it's behaving like this. We're only modifying our current map tiles. This needs to be not current map, but it needs to be the map row and column. So let's take a look at our scene instantiation and see. It takes a map row and a map column. Okay. So what if let's look at our scene view here. Our scene view is a scene instantiation. Okay. We're doing this wrong. We don't want to update our current map tiles. We want to insert this into our current map tiles. But how do we insert? What am I missing? Now, once our next map gets instantiated, yeah, it's not that we want to insert it into the current map, it's that we want to insert it into into a certain map. Now, when we call this function, all it's doing is overriding the current map tiles. Now we need to overwrite the next map tiles if they exist, but with the correct values. So I think we were onto something with once we transition. And if we pass in see, in the map instantiation will get all of these animation stuffs, but it'll only ever write animations to the current map. We need to be able to modify our next map sprites even if we're transitioning. They're fine once it finishes transitioning, but they don't appear until it's done transitioning. So until our next map becomes our current map, we're not rendering those sprites. So how do we render? And it's not that we need to, it's that we need to modify the tile ID of our next map if we're transitioning, not just our current map. Because right now we're only changing the ID of our current map. So how do we change the ID? Yeah, I want to say we... Okay, here, let's manually try something here, and we'll say if our scene view dot next map exists, then we're going to go ahead and modify the tiles of our next map. Now, it's not current map, it's next map, but we can't give the row and column here. We have to give the row and column +1. So there's scene 1, and we're rendering scene 1 again. Okay, yeah. So we're still not rendering the next map's frames. So if next map exists, we're going into the next map's tiles and we're putting the animation, but that's only ever getting the animation of the current frame, not the next frame. So how do we do that? How do we say it's that we're only ever updating the current map. We'll never render. We got to get away from rendering the current map, and we just have to insert it into the map at the right index. But the map at the right index is part of a map instantiation that is assigned to our current scene. So we need to go to our current scene, go to our next map tiles, and put in whatever ID the next map instantiation has. Why is it that we're only inserting into the current map? We need to assign our animations to the next map as well, if there is one. So, what does that mean? We need to, and it's not that we need to, our insert only ever puts it in current map. So how do we do insert into the next frame if we've got it? So like if there's a next map, we want to insert animations into this map, not the current map. What are we missing, man? What are we missing? We're only ever putting stuff into the current map is the problem. We need to assign the correct animation for the next map as well. So what if our insert animation takes in a next map and we initialize our next map initially to false? No, well, it doesn't make sense to do that. We need to get away from this. We need to get away from only inserting stuff into the current map. Now we could do a insert next animation, which takes in a row and a column and an animation, just like this one, but it inserts into our next map at the tiles table, at the row given as a parameter, and its .id field gets whatever animation we pass it. But see, so what's the difference here? We're not doing it. The only difference is we're inserting into the next map. So why am I stuck? Why am I so stuck? Instead of the current map, is there a way to modify this current map by giving it a row and column? I don't think there is. Because current map is just a map instantiation. Maybe Yeah, upon a scene transition, we get a new next map with the animations for that next map. But we need to be able to render it. We need to be able to insert those animations into the next map, not just the current map. So upon a transition, if we were to say we're going to manually assign the next map's tiles, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do it. We'll figure it out tomorrow. I'm not figuring it out today. We've got them in the right place. We're just not rendering them on screen. So we'll figure it out tomorrow. I just can't focus anymore. Is that really all we did? That can't be right. We added a whole class. We added a whole InsertAnimation class, which isn't showing up in the Git diff, but we'll say we added InsertAnimation class to modify animation sprites per scene. We're just not rendering them right. Okay, so hopefully we'll figure it out tomorrow. We'll see. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you later.